think I got it.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Good evening, Facebook friends. I'm Helen Arcantu. I'm the CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am so grateful that you're joining us this evening for our Unite Against Hate series, The State of Bias Crimes here in New Jersey. We kicked off this series last night with a really important conversation that we had with some leaders in our LGBTQ plus community. We do encourage you, if you did not get to see that broadcast, that it is still posted live on our, it still is posted on our Facebook page, and you can watch it at any time. It's also on our YouTube channel. And I do encourage you to watch it. As I expect from this evening, I know I learned a lot from the conversation, and it was also, really inspiring. I believe provided a lot of hope, which we definitely need right now for sure. Tonight we do kick off, as I said, the second in a series of 4 conversations that we're hosting about the surge of hate crimes that we are seeing in New Jersey. Just to let you know, our goal with this series that we put together, our goals were really to understand more about how these crimes impact those who have been targeted. We also want to make sure that our community who are from these targeted communities know how to report these crimes if they're happening to them. We also want to make sure that the community knows where to find resources for support for themselves and for their family and friends. And finally, for those of us who are not members of these targeted communities, I'm especially talking to all of you. We want you to listen very, very closely. It is really important that you learn, that you take notes, and that you really leave this evening thinking about how you personally can help stop hate and what your role is in this, because sharing perspectives is a really, really important way, and the stories are an important first step for us all to learn how to create empathy and respect for all. And, from there, we really need action. We need action from everybody. And so this is an important conversation, but we want you to leave with a to-do list tonight. And we want you to be listening to think about what your personal to-do list will be. As I shared tonight, we are focusing on the AAPI community. But before we jump into the conversation, I just want to acknowledge that at 6:30 this evening, a rally started at Temple, Ner Tamid in Bloomfield, which was an interfaith rally against hate that was hosted because of the horrific attack that happened at the temple this weekend. There's over 1,000 people that are together inside and outside at the temple right now, and it's also live available to be watched, and probably later to be watched if you couldn't see it tonight through the temple's YouTube channel. I myself had been watching it until I jumped over to do this conversation this evening. And even AAPI Montclair, Ruth Rowe is there representing, and I heard her speak before I jumped over. And I think that's really a wonderful example of how communities support each other. And that's really what you're seeing happen in that room tonight. And that's really what we're hoping to foster for all of you with these conversations. And please know we will be talking about anti-Semitism and speaking to members of our Jewish community as in the third part of the series, and that will be on Tuesday evening. So with that, I'd like to frame this conversation for us a little bit. For those of you that don't know, I want to share some important statistics. New Jersey has the 3rd largest Asian American population in the United States, with 10% of the state's population identifying as Asian based on our U.S. Census estimate. Asian leaders do say that their communities are feeling powerless, especially since the shootings that claimed 8 lives in Georgia in 2021. And the FBI reports that About 8,200 hate crimes across the United States happened in 2020, and that was the most that they had seen in 2 decades. We know that this tally is underrepresented because there is a lot of fear in reporting these crimes, and also there's inconsistent statistics happening across jurisdictions as well. And again, we also know that the numbers are rising. Here in New Jersey, an important step to stop hate through education happened when we were very grateful that Governor Murphy signed a new law in 2022 mandating that New Jersey teach Asian American and Pacific Islander history in the K through 12 curriculum starting the 2022-2023 academic school year. But let's be clear that this does not check the box. Clearly, that's not enough. The incidents of hate crimes are still rising, and there is more to be done. And again, that's why this conversation is so important. I'd like to introduce our panelists to you and turn the conversation over to them. First, I'd like to welcome Assemblywoman Ellen Park. She is a lawyer who was elected in 2021 to the New Jersey General Assembly, to New Jersey's 37th Legislative District. She is the first Korean American woman to be elected to the New Jersey Legislature. She was born in South Korea, and she moved to the United States as a child, where she was raised in New York City neighborhoods of Sunnyside and Flushing. She attended Bronx High School of Science and New York University, and she earned her Juris Doctor degree from Hofstra University Maurice A. Dean School of Law. She was elected in 2016 to serve on the Englewood Cliffs Borough Council. Welcome, Assemblywoman. And I'd like to introduce you all to Amber Reed. She is the president of AAPI Montclair, a grassroots nonprofit that was formed in 2021 to uplift New Jersey's Asian American community. She is an advocate for AAPI rights and representation, and also promotes awareness and education around AAPI culture and history through, obviously, the work. AAPI Montclair has supported passage and implementation of New Jersey's historic AAPI curriculum mandate, promoted AAPI visibility in New Jersey with public events attended by thousands, and organized free public safety trainings, community education initiatives, and supported mental health for AAPI youth and adults. She is a Korean American adoptee, writer, public servant, mom of two school-age children, and she serves on the Episcopal Diocese of Newark's Racial Justice and Healing Commission and the New Jersey AAPI Commission. So welcome, Amber. And I also want to welcome two of our young folks who are joining us this evening, our student representatives. We have Brian Heo, who is a sophomore at Boston University, majoring in business. He has been a part of the Asian American Youth Council Board for now 5 years. And through this organization, he rallied community members to vote for a variety of elections, broadened cultural horizons of Asian Americans, and delivered the campaign in an effort to prevent Asian hate crimes to preserve democracy in America. He is planning to become an accountant in the near future. Welcome, Brian. And also we have Eunice Lee, who is a senior in high school and attending Cornell University this fall as a global development major. She is currently a AAYC board member as well, and she has been part of this organization since 2019. She has spearheaded gathering the voices of Asian Americans throughout the nation by focusing on raising social awareness about political rights. Some of AAYC's accomplishments include establishing the first Korean Hanbok Day in the United States, advocating for the importance of voting within the Asian American community, and advocating for underrepresented minorities like mobility rights for disadvantaged people with the Korean Congress Ministry of Health and Welfare. So thank you, first of all, thank you for being so generous to join us and share, because we know that it's a lot to share, especially in these times when there's so much happening around us that is so, so disturbing, both in your communities as well as in others happening around us, like what we saw at the temple this weekend. Um, Before we jump in, I into the questions, I wanted to ask though, my family and I attended AAPI Lunar's their Lunar New Year celebration this past weekend, and as we, attend many of their events, we had a wonderful time. We learned a lot, but I was thinking as I was walking through the crowd there, we've seen 3 years of a rise in anti-Asian violence. And just so recently, we saw Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay mass shootings at the start of this amazing, wonderful 2-week holiday celebration. How does it feel to gather? At something like that? I know Assemblywoman Park was there. I know Amber was there. I don't know if Brian and Eunice were there. But I just wondered how it feels as being part of the community, knowing that all this is happening around you, but wanting to come together to celebrate in such a beautiful way.
I mean, you can't be afraid, right? I mean, you need to keep going. And, first of all, I hope we're over the pandemic and that's long behind us soon. But I think it was just so wonderful for all of us to gather. And I was telling Amber, like, the weather was fantastic. It just came together very nicely. And I think everybody, obviously we, grieve for those in Monterey Park and Half Moon, but at the same time, like, we need to kind of march on and always remember, but we can't be afraid of things that may or may not happen. So.
Yeah, I totally echo those feelings. It felt very healing together, and we just can't stop doing the work we need to do because of the grief, and certainly not because of the fear. We think, it would be very easy for us to just have a banquet together, but we make these big public celebrations happen and open them up and invite everyone in because we think that if you grow up, part of going to the dragon parade and banging that drum and learning, Korean games from beautiful elders dressed in their hanbok, you're not going to grow up and have that fear or suspicion that are, poisoning some of our public discourse. So it's so important. It was so important to come together, even with everything that has happened.
Yeah, so I mean, I also feel the same way. I think it's very important to um, broaden the cultural horizon, especially for spreading Asian culture. That's why it was so important to have Hanbok Day. You know, most most of the times, Asian culture is often, or Asian Americans are often ignored from politics. So I just feel like so honored and so happy that that I was able to be a part of Hanbok Day and many ceremonies that celebrate many Asian Americans and bringing all races together.
For me, I think even in times where there's a lot of fear and tragedy, it's especially important for us to unite as a community. And so, these public events, celebrating our cultural holidays and creating and recognizing our culture like Hanbok Day is so important for the Asian American community and all communities in general to kind of create this space where we feel like we have people to rely on within our community, even when there are saddening things going on in some other regions of the world.
And sorry about that mute. But I was just going to say, I do encourage all of you watching, if you have not connected with organizations like AAPI Montclair or others like them, please do, and please attend their events. Again, not only is it just a wonderful time to be there, but it also, you learn a lot. And I do believe that it's key and core in what we're talking about here. So I encourage you to learn more about these organizations, and we'll have the links for you to connect to them in the chat and on this broadcast. So Assemblywoman Park, Brian just said how the AAPI community is just not well represented in politics. Now we have you, gratefully in the assembly. And yesterday there was a lot going on in the chat when we were talking with the LGBTQ plus community, and this obviously is across the board, but how representation matters. How that's not just a saying; it's real and it's true. Now that you are an elected official, and you have all the power and all that comes with that, what do you see as what you can do in this space, and how can your colleagues, who maybe obviously are not from the community, how can they support the work that needs to be done to be able to help protect our AAPI community?
So I just, want to give a shout out to my colleagues, because, we're the ticket of dispersed, and we talk about, these targeted communities, but my colleague Shama Haider is the first female Muslim assemblywoman in the legislatures, and Gordon Johnson is the first Black New Jersey senator from District 37. So just our District 37 is probably, the most diverse ticket. And that being said, we always come together to support each other's communities, to, attend each other's communities events, because, when one person or when one community gets targeted, we should look at it as all of us getting targeted, right? And so, representation matters, and not only, it's hard because I'm only one out of 120, people, and I giggle because you say I have the power. I have 120th of the power in the legislature, right? But it still is something, right? And so my first year out, it's been really spreading the word of the power of the vote and what that means to our community. And just last week, we passed 2 resolutions on the assembly floor. One is for Kimchi Day, November 22nd, acknowledging that it is Kimchi Day, which is, it's just more than food. If you say kimchi, it's like embedded in our, culture. It's embedded in our blood, right? It's something that's been a tradition for 4,000 plus years, and it's not just about the kimchi making process and all these things, but it is basically interconnected to our identity as a Korean American, right? So, that was very important. And in the second resolution that we also passed is the acknowledging the Korean Vietnam War veterans that fought side by side with the American soldiers. I think something like estimated 15,000 had died during the Vietnam War that, fought, the Korean soldiers that fought side by side with the Americans. So, again, it's acknowledging those veterans, and most of the veterans live here in the States, right? Because they served in the war. So, it's just, again, letting our community know that I have their back, and we are trying to spread the word to our community outside, people trying to spread the word outside of our community to make us more, familiar. So people outside of our community are not looking at us like, oh, you're so foreign, you're not American. It goes back to the roots of go back to your country. And it's definitely not the case now, and I think people, us as Korean Americans, we need to spread the word. And the people outside of our community hopefully will be accepting of what we are trying to do. So,
yeah. And I mean, again, it's such a inspiration generationally for youth to grow up seeing you in the seat that you're in. And even if it's 1/20th of the power, that is really symbolic, so that in years to come, those numbers will shift because has started that. And also, we talk at the YWCA regularly about the power of the vote. That is our power, and having you there, really can, and we know, inspire the AAPI community to come out and vote, because now they do see, that, and feel that the government is for them too, when they see themselves, in the government. So it's so important. And, at the YW, we continue to encourage, women and, women from all communities to come forward and to be running for office, so that they can be representing the values, that are, so important, that as we only can, in those seats. So we're glad you're there, and we look forward to this being a trend, for sure, and that increases. So Amber, let me talk to you for a minute. I mean, obviously, we know that there's been a 77% increase in hate crimes against the AAPI community, specifically from March 2020 to June 2021. I mean, in such a short, compressed period of time, that number is astounding. And we also know that, again, asterisk there, that the majority of these cases are likely unreported. So that is not necessarily a reflective number of the reality. And so around all this is when you started your organization, to, rally around your community. And, for those who don't know, the YWCA of Northern New Jersey honored AAPI Montclair at our Racial Justice Awards last year because of the significant work, that they are doing. Can you talk a little bit about that moment of thought, and then how it grew to be AAPI Montclair? Because I think it's important for those watching to hear, because these types of crimes really can make an individual feel powerless. And yet what you have done, with your organization, is really, and I have to say, is one of the most empowering organizations that I know. So I think it's important to really share that story a little bit, and talk about, so that it can be a model for others who might be feeling powerless, and that how they can organize and mobilize, and move forward from these horrific incidents in a way that hopefully can shift and change the trend.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I want to be very real and honest about this and say, we saw 13 years of declines in anti-Asian sentiment reversed in 3 weeks of reckless rhetoric about China flu, Kung flu, just this. And it was, even for those who weren't directly affected by anti-Asian violence, and by the way, so many were. I have friends who were hit on the back of the head by strangers, who had coffee thrown on them when they were driving in their cars. Even if you didn't directly experience something horrible like that, you sort of suddenly realize that your sort of acceptance here was a lot more tenuous than you had thought it was, right? And so for me, I sort of went numb for a long time, which I think is actually a very common response to racialized trauma. And then when the Atlanta spa shootings happened, it was sort of like a jolt out of that numbness, because people died. I mean, people had died before, but that it was a really horrible morning to wake up to, and so to sort of feel like I'm in a state of shock. I'm really hurting. I'm really worried about my children's future, and then to sort of see most people in the world who weren't Asian sort of like still talking about leaf blowers and everything, and it was just like, oh, I need my community. I need to find my community. And that's what we all did. This was also all being played out in parallel in our children's schools. 1 out of 3 AAPI parents say that their child has experienced a bullying incident at school during the pandemic. And like, if you're a mom, like, maybe you won't fight for yourself, but you're sure as heck gonna fight for your children. So we came together to just like start, creating that community. Our local NAACP reached out to one of us and said, what can we do for you? And she was like, I don't know. I can only speak for myself because we haven't created this community that we really need. So that's the origin of our organization. Since then, we've tried to do public safety work, trying to engage our community in upstander trainings. One of the most important things you learn in those trainings is that even if you can't do anything for someone in the moment, it's very important to like be with them afterward and let them know you saw it and it was not okay, and you're willing to walk with them to wherever they need to be, right? And so I would say to our allies, like, think about that. Check in on your Asian friends when weeks like last week happen. Don't let them feel like they're alone and unseen. We also do like self-defense classes, and we've also been trying to start normalizing discussions around mental health for our community, both for adults and youth. It's something that's just like historically often not part of our vocabulary. We didn't grow up in a culture of going to therapy every week. But it's so important now, especially with all of the loads that we've all been carrying during the past few years.
Yeah. And thank you again for sharing that, because I do know that there are people in our community that have experienced these incidents and want to do something but don't know what to do. And just hearing how you all came together, I know is an inspiration to help them feel empowered. So Eunice, Amber just talked about the mental health impact that the community is feeling. We know that anti-AAPI hate has led to significant fear and stress and depression and anxiety in the community. And specifically, I mean, she just mentioned the impact and the incidents that have happened in schools for our youth. How can we come together to create a safe space for our youth in the school setting?
So I think safe space can be very general, like a safe space you feel safe physically, or you feel safe like in your mental state or like emotionally. And first, like as a high school student myself, a safe space for me at school is a space where I feel comfortable to have open and honest conversations about both heavy and light topics. And in this case, the issue of anti-AAPI hate, the issue leading to fear, stress, depression, anxiety, things like that in the AAPI community is a very heavy topic that I think students should be able to openly talk about and try to create a safe space through conversation at school. And I think in the conversations, we should acknowledge that as students, we're a lot more similar than different, because I believe familiarity and being able to acknowledge our similar experiences beyond race and things like that is important in facilitating that safe space, because familiarity to me brings closeness, comfort, and overall safety, which I think fosters goodwill. So I think we should have open conversations to acknowledge how similar we are as people and try to have conversations on how we can not prevent, but acknowledge the tragedies that are going on and how we can solve them as a student body community.
Thank you, Eunice. So Brian, obviously you and Eunice are so involved in student movements, that are connected to our youth. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about how, how we keep mobilizing our youth, how we keep engaging our youth, whether it's at high school level or college level, to organize, and how we can support them. I think when we look at so many of these issues, the generational aspect of them in terms of, trying to make change is so key and core. So here, we're talking about this in such a global way, but just thinking about it, within our youth.
So, I mean, working with students does not necessarily mean working like directly with other students. I think it's about having the same purpose through spreading Asian culture in America. We Asian American Youth Council, for example, we wrote a letter regarding the implementation of the Lunar New Year as a federal holiday to close the divide between Asian Americans and other Americans. And we are also engaged in creating Korean Hanbok Day across many states in America, like New Jersey, Arizona, and Colorado. And through these activities, we are able to provide voices to numerous Asian Americans so that they're able to express their opinions to prevent and stop AAPI hate. And we're also planning and working towards bringing K-pop stars for Hanbok Day to spread the importance of Asian culture. And I believe that AOYC's purpose of spreading Asian culture in many areas to mitigate racism problems is the true meaning of bringing all students together, because our culture activities will bring all Americans together towards one single purpose of maybe stopping AAPI hate regardless of race.
Thank you. So, Assemblywoman, I want to ask you. I know that here, Bergen County is the home of the second largest Asian American population in the state of New Jersey. How do we help our communities kind of engage, embrace, I should say, more so than engage, but embrace kind of the melding of the cultures, within our state, so that, it isn't just one community here and one community there. How do we create that bridge and that kind of cultural competency and cultural connection across communities?
I think it's important for Asian Americans to realize that we are Asian, or by our traditions and cultures, but also that there's an American side to us, right? And the American side is that we need to be more vocal, I feel, because culturally, Asians, we're always told like not to confront people. It's not within our culture to be so confrontational or kind of speak up about certain, I guess, complaints that you might have. And it's kind of looked down upon. And especially, when we're talking about mental health, is like that stigma. We don't talk about those things. Like those things are not, if you're unhappy, you just keep it to yourself. Or if you have some kind of, mental issues, you just keep it to yourself. You don't tell anyone, right? Because it'll be shameful to the family or something like that. And the American side says, no, this is, something that should be spoken about, because mental health is the same as physical health, right? Body and mind are connected, right? And so I think in order for us to kind of spread the word and be more familiar, like I said prior, to people outside of our community, we just need to be out there talking to people, right? And vice versa. So when we want our, friends outside of the community also who, know us, to, not just befriend us, but to also spread the word of the AAPI community to others. And that could be something like, hey, have you ever tried Korean food? Like, have you ever tried Korean barbecue? Like, let's go try it out. Like just kind of opening yourself to new adventures, new things. And again, New Jersey is probably going to be one of the fastest growing Asian population. I mean, I honestly believe it's going to outgrow New York very soon. I know for a fact that there are people in Korea or in China that specifically come to New Jersey rather than to New York to either study abroad or to raise their family, because they've heard such, wonderful things about New Jersey, right? It's not as hectic as New York. It's the education system's better, like all these things. And I feel that we have the opportunity now to, really spread the word and make it more of a melting pot, right? I think the only thing that kind of differentiates New Jersey from New York is that because New York is, it's more congested, people bump into each other all the time, whereas in New Jersey, we have certain areas of different pockets of community that unless you go there, right, such as like Palisades Park, right, which is over 50% Korean, you're really not going to have that kind of interaction. And I think, you know, being American, you need to go and you know, you don't have to go all the way to you know, Poland to check out Polish culture or Polish communities. You can go to Garfield, right? Like it's right there. So I think we need to really take advantage of those things and you know, kind of spread the word on both sides, right?
Mhm.
So you know, I think that's very important.
Thank you. I don't know, does anyone else have any thoughts on that they'd, you know, like to share on that question? So then I what I will switch though is to a question a little bit about the curriculum, you know, that has been rolled out here in New Jersey. And I know Amber, you were very involved in that advocacy to bring that to fruition here for us. Um, can you talk a little bit about the importance of that and you know what that process was like and you know getting that approved and you know why we think it's so important for that to be the case, that it's part of our curriculum?
Sure. I mean, so much of the racism that Asian Americans experience is sort of like caused by ignorance and sort of poisoned imaginations. You know, we're squeezed between two myths: the perpetual foreigner myth on the one hand that says we'll always be, you know, we'll always belong to somewhere else more. We won't be trustworthy because our loyalties will lie elsewhere, right? We don't really belong here. And then on the other hand, even among sometimes very progressive people, you're still encountering the model minority myth that we don't have any troubles, everything's great for us, we don't really need any support or to be included in conversations about diversity and such. And you know, when you're talking about this kind of problem, you can't just react to the, you know, hate incidents that occur. You have to be digging under to like, why is this, you know? And of course, like if people are growing up either never seeing Asians represented anywhere or, you know, never meeting meeting one and you know only encountering us in their textbooks as sort of like enemies in foreign wars or you know victims of
Mm.
imperialism, of course like that you leave this black hole for all of these horrible ideas to rush into at certain times of national crisis. So we saw education as absolutely the place where we need to be directing our energies. You know, we learn about Ellis Island. Let's learn about Angel Island too. We learn about Western expansion. Let's learn about the Chinese laborers who helped to build the Transcontinental Railroad. Let's learn about the South Asian American farmers who like helped feed America. You know, we've been here for hundreds of years. How can we still be treated as strangers in a strange land? How can we still be thought of as like carriers of sin and disease, you know? And I think if kids grow up reading about their Asian American friends, if Asian Americans get to grow up seeing themselves
Mm.
in their classrooms instead of like weirdly absent and invisible, right? Of course, it's going to make a difference in the long term. So, I mean, we were the second nation in the country before California, before New York, to pass an API curriculum mandate. We're so proud of that. We're so grateful to champions like Assemblywoman Park. Um, and it's because, you know, our students, you know, went to the State House shaking like leaves and talked about their experiences and how much this could mean to them. And that's why, you know, it wasn't a party line thing. It had near unanimous support. And now we just all need to come together to realize the promise of this bill. Because of course you can't just sign it and then, then you're done. It's all happening school by school. So that's why we now have an initiative called Teach Asian American Stories that's trying to support districts across New Jersey to really realize the promise that this legislation holds for our schools.
So what can we do to help support that initiative? Because as you said, you know, laws get passed all the time, and that's one hurdle for sure, but implementation and, you know, the policy and the administrative piece of it is key in really it, doing what it intended. So tell us, how can we help bring this curriculum into every school district across the state of New Jersey in the way that it was intended?
Sure. Well, if you are a family in a public school district, be in dialogue with your teachers, your principals, your superintendents about this legislation. They have an awful lot on their plates. Just open up a constructive dialogue with them. And if you want, bring us in. You can go to teachasianamericanstories.org. We have funding available to help provide trainings, textbooks, materials for classrooms around this. There is supposed to be a commission seated in the State Department of Education to support this. On a legislative level, we need funding as well. We're trying to raise some private support, but some public funding, hint, hint, behind this would go a long way.
Yes. Well, and obviously, and just a shout out just so that our viewers can remember that AAPI Montclair and organizations, many organizations like them, are nonprofit organizations, and they do rely on the support of the community to be able to do their important work. So we have the link so that you can connect to their organization. I do encourage you to check them out, and do consider, when you are thinking about where to invest your money for impact, that AAPI Montclair is a great place to do that. We also will put the link here to, and say it again for us, Amber, so that we can, I know the YWTV elves behind the scene, will make that happen for us.
Wow.
But say it again for us.
TeachAsianAmericanStories.org.
Thank you. And so we will put that into the chat. And we do encourage you, again, we talk about action items that could come from today. Here is one of them. You could reach out to your school district and, provide the link. You can go on yourself and figure out, maybe some ways to give, to present the information to your district so that they can think about how to assimilate it into the curriculum for the school year. And as I said, in the way that it was intended when it was passed unanimously in the New Jersey legislature. So thank you for sharing that. That's great. And I'm curious, Eunice and Brian, your youth, and I know, Eunice, you're coming out of high school, and Brian, I know you're already out, but what does it mean to you and to young people to know that this is, I know it's being established still, but that it's here and that it's coming?
For me, it's really great to hear that. But when I'm still a student, but
Right.
in high school, I do not remember learning about Asian American history in history classes. I do not really remember, but I do remember learning about African American history, like how the 1964 Civil Rights Act, how that act was passed, and like Rosa Parks, MLK. We learned about a lot of really famous African Americans, what they did. So I always thought, there must be some really famous Asian Americans who did a lot of stuff, politics, even Asian American celebrities. So I just felt the necessity to include Asian American history part of the curriculum in many states, and I just feel really great to hear that there are a lot of opportunities to support including Asian American history or part of the curriculum, and yeah, I just feel great. In the future, I hope more Asian Americans are can be seen in history books, and so that Asian Americans can have more representation and probably more voices in America.
That's great.
For me, so back when I was learning world history or things like that, there would be a page or two on Asia, and it would most of the time only be about China. And Asia does not consist of just China. There's so many other Asian countries, and I felt really underrepresented. The history that my parents talked about and the history that I was learning out of history books did not align. Information that my parents were telling me, I couldn't find it in my textbooks, and I felt like students weren't getting enough information on like the holistic aspect of history. And it didn't sadden me, but I just accepted that it was my reality, which is not a good thing. But it was how I kind of dealt with being underrepresented at the time. And I think it's really amazing that there are initiatives being acted upon now so that Asian Americans can be more represented, better represented in our curriculum and things like that. And that, it makes me really excited for the future generations to receive a wider view, a holistic view on actual world history and on Asia beyond what are in history books, which is like just China. So I think this is a really great thing, and I look forward to the future students learning.
That's great. Well, as happens, time passes quickly, and I know we're, slowly going to be wrapping up. And for anyone watching, please feel free to drop a question, and we would be happy to ask it to our panel. But I would be remiss in leaving tonight without asking you all really the same question that I asked everyone last night. Obviously our goal with this series is to get folks to unite against hate. Can you each share something that comes to mind for you, whether it's something that an individual can do or something that's more of a macro policy level, but something that we could each do to help us unite against hate and to really help change the trajectory of where we are headed with bias crimes and hate in New Jersey and obviously across the country as well. We want to leave with the to-do list tonight, so I'd love for you to give us some action items. And I appreciate the teachasianamericanstories.org, which, as I said, we now have the link in the comments so people can connect to it. So that's a great to-do item.
I guess I'll go first. We're talking about supporting each other, and how do you do that? It could be that you go to each other's rallies. Just because you're not Jewish doesn't mean you can't go to the rally in Bloomfield, right? We support each other because, you definitely have to put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? And when you do that, you realize we're all in the same boat, right? A hate attack against one community is an attack on all of us. So that is a way to do that, is to definitely physically go and support others. And the other thing is, obviously, if you can't physically go, would be to donate or contribute in some other way. If it's not your time, then if you have, if you want to share $20 or whatever it is, like there's always organizations out there that help, that are part of this community and that are always fighting for the greater good. So, it's always helpful if you can do that as well. So, there's various different ways, obviously, to be supportive. But, just do something, whether it's you're on Facebook, you can, say something, donate, whatever it is. Like, there's always ways. So I think we need to be more proactive in showing the support. And so that's what I would tell everyone, is to be proactive and show your support of other communities.
So I want to tell people to actually, register to vote, or if you're already registered, please vote. And I just believe that voting is really important because citizens basically vote for leaders to represent them and their ideas. So if you don't vote, your beliefs and your hope will not be achieved. So I believe that it's just really important to vote. And a lot of young adults, most young adults, even my friends, they're not even registered to vote. So I really want to encourage students to actually, register. And if you're registered, please vote.
Right. You have to go physically register them. I'm giving you an assignment.
Yeah.
You need to list your friends and physically register them.
To raise, to give voices to many Americans, especially Asian Americans. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For me, I think this is more for the younger generation, but I think advocacy is very important, and it's kind of similar to what Assembly member Ellen Park and Brian said. But advocacy is so important. These days everyone has social media. Just adding a story, letting people know what's going on in the world. Informational posts, posting that on your story as well. Just if you can't advocate through social media, just speaking up in person, spreading the word among your friends, things like that. I think that's so important. Again, like starting conversations, having honest conversations are, I feel like, all a part of advocacy. And I think, you know, it's important for adults to do their thing, but for students and younger generations on what they can do on their level, yeah, I think advocacy, conversations, things like that is so important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think United Against Hate is the perfect title for this series. I think white supremacy often operates by trying to divide us all into different silos. Put the Asians here, put the Black and African American community here, put the LGBTQ community here, and sort of like make them think that there's only a limited pie that they all have to sort of fight over. And that's how you keep people from realizing the power that they have in community and connection. So just anything we can do to break down these walls is so important. You can find, AAPI Montclair is not in every town, but if you're near us, come and volunteer for us. Come and show up for our events that we're inviting you into, our upstander trainings, our self-defense classes, our youth programs. Find something in your community that you can help out with. Don't think that you wouldn't be welcome or you don't have a role. I mean, it means so much for us to see, not just Asian people showing up to help us do all the things we're trying to do. And just like if you are Asian, have hope. As Assemblywoman Park was talking about, the sort of like silent suffering, but we are in a country where things can change. We can work on change that we'll see both in our lifetimes, our children's lifetimes, and maybe beyond the frame as well. We can be planting some really important seeds.
Absolutely. Well, as with last night, this conversation just leaves a lot to really think about. I hope that those of you that are watching, whether you watched it live or whether you watched it, later, that when you're finished watching it, that you just sit for a moment. Don't run back to your life. Just sit and really think and process and unpack everything that you heard. It is so generous of all of you to come and share your experience, your stories, your collective knowledge, from your experience and your work tonight with all of us. And I hope that, again, for those of us watching, that, we realize that there is an action item that every single one of us can take. It doesn't matter whether you're a member of any of the communities that we are focused on in terms of these conversations, but that every one of us has a very important part in changing the trajectory of where we're at. And again, everyone's not for rallies. Everyone's not a letter writer. Everyone's not a social media person, but you're one of those. And whichever one you are is the one that you should exercise. And as I shared last night, and I'm sure I'll share again, what I've learned from my work in this space is that the more you do, the deeper you go, and the more capacity you learn for yourself. And so you have to start somewhere. And tonight is a great time to do it if you haven't already. So we really do encourage you to learn about the organizations that you learned about today. We want to also make sure that we share with all of you that at the end of the series, we will be putting together a toolkit of resources. Again, how to report, where to get support, how to report crimes, where to get support and resources, and also organizations that you can be engaged with and that you can learn more about and that you can advocate and, activate with. So we will be putting that out at the end of the series. We do encourage any of you watching, and obviously all who are on the panel with us tonight, to send us resources and information that you would like us to include. And we will absolutely be doing that. So thank you so much again for being here. I want to make sure that you note that on Tuesday, February 7th at 7 p.m., we will be having our virtual conversation about anti-Semitism. And so we do hope that you will join us for that. And the final part of this series is an in-person conversation, and that is happening in a town hall forum at our very gracious hosts at Caldwell University. We'll be coming together on February 8th at 7 p.m. And we will continue to talk about hope and healing around these hate crimes, and specifically talking about communities and how communities can come together after a crime has happened in their community. Our speakers that evening will be our New Jersey Attorney General, Matthew Platkin, physician leader and social change agent, Dr. Chris Purnell, and mother and community leader in West Essex County, Monique Joseph. And I do encourage all of you to join us to be part of that conversation. It is a free event. You can register. We have the link here for you right now in the comments on Eventbrite. And we do hope that you come join us to hear that conversation as well. And we just hope you stay engaged with the YWCA. We do encourage voting. We want to see more representation in our choices for office. So we also encourage you to run for office, not just for to vote. And there's lots of places where you can exercise that, whether it's in a town council, a planning committee, a board of education. There's many places that you can and should be. So we definitely want to encourage you. And the very wise Jessie Isabel is saying, lead by example, bring your children and teens to the event at the town hall and to other events like this, because this is their future. That's very wise, Miss Jessie. Thank you for sharing that. We agree. And I have to, and with, Brian said vote, and, that is really where our power is. We will see more Assemblywoman Parks in office for sure, and more diversity and who we have in office if we continue to have the people voting, really engaged in making sure that people in office and what they do when they're there is reflective of the values of the voters for sure. So with that, we tell you all to please have a safe, wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us. I do encourage you to go to the YouTube channel for the temple and watch the interfaith rally as well. As I said, I was watching it right up until I jumped over for our event, and it was wonderful and really inspirational and really full of hope, which is, again, what we're hoping for. So I do encourage you to watch that. I also encourage you to tell someone in your life to watch this taping, because as I said, it's on our Facebook page, and we want to make sure that people get the benefit of all the great information that was shared, and stay connected to us all, AAPI Montclair, YWCA, and other organizations that we mentioned tonight through social media, and have a good evening. Thank you again to all of our speakers. Good night.